Hey everybody, welcome back to PCM22. This is Dragons and it's episode number 3. Last one that I'm going to ask this on because the algorithm really takes set after the first 3 episodes, and from that point on, you don't garner new audience on episode 65. You get it on those first 3 episodes. They might notice that the series is going on at 65, but they're going to immediately go back and pick up from the beginning. So if you could take just a second, drop down below, click that like button, leave that comment, which so far through the first couple of episodes, the community has been enormously positive about this series. So it looks like you are as excited as I am. I've been super excited to get this series underway for an age now. I came up with the idea quite a while ago. I refined it a little bit over time as I was preparing for this, but I just needed that Pro Cyclist series to wrap up, and that ended up taking longer than I expected it to. But we've got plenty of time to get a whole lot of episodes in on this, but we've got to make some rapid progress for that to happen. Speaking of, we are on to the national championships here, and we're going to have to do so in a rather quick way. I'm going to probably pick one, like China or Japan, that I'm going to get in, race with our like 2 or 3 guys that we have, and hope that we can train and get a lead out train of some sort and get one of those guys into at least a top 10 to help with our evaluations. But let's see how those evaluations begin to emerge. We have Corpez racing for the Philippines on the individual time trial. He is amongst the favorites, but not anywhere up there. But if he can get a top 10, that can help us with the sponsor evaluation. Oh, and he grabs a 3rd place. Excellent job by Corpez. That's going to help us out. Nowhere near the top placings in Japan for the individual time trial. The reason why getting a really good rating with the sponsors is so easy on continental level is situations like this. Shi Saiying is right at the end of the list. He finished 7th out of 8th. He was almost last place in the individual time trial for Taiwan. Look at what place he finished. Not compared to everybody else around him, which was obviously very bad, but he finished in 7th. And a top 10 is a good thing. Even a top 25 will nibble away at that sponsor confidence. We were upper end of neutral. Now we're already into a positive result just from a bad finish, because the way the evaluations work and the way they assume is a 7th is a really good finish. If you were in the Netherlands, or if you were in France, or if you were in Australia, here, that was a terrible result, but the game doesn't know the difference. So getting that high evaluation in Continental is pretty easy, and it looks like we're at a stage where we're about to hit super success here pretty quickly. I don't even need to bother doing one of these races, which means from here we're going to be heading straight into August and our first transfer window. Moment of truth as we enter the signing period, our first changeover. Now, the current squad has actually improved by a decent amount from where we started to where we are now. We had a lot of 0-star guys. We had a lot of half to 1-star guys. And, we're looking at now a half dozen 2-star guys. But that's still not good. That's the thing. Even though we've made some quality progress within the group this season, I think primary reason for that is all or most of these guys did not exist on any teams. So they sat without gathering XP, other than very, very slowly, very, just on a low organic level. That saw them only being, 2nd, 3rd, 4th level, no matter how many years old they are. They were still very low level compared to what they could be, but with a low base and a low ceiling, even with a decent amount of progression this year, they're still fairly worthless. Like 2 stars is pretty much the minimum, even for us, that we should be dealing with, which means outside of those that are on long-term existing deals, which is half the squad, these guys, no chance of retention. While we have Air China coming back plus 2 additional options in terms of sponsorship, one of those meeting the requirements, one is not. Brazil, we can't take that. We need an Asian only sponsor, and BIBD, who actually sponsored us in the regular career mode of PCM22, we cannot select them. And the reason for that is, if you remember, I set a 2-year minimum per sponsor. And Air China has been with us for 1 year, so we must stick with them for at least one more. Next year, if somebody like BIBD come along, then we could, if we so choose, switch to a new sponsor. As we enter the new signing period here, first off, we're starting at 63 points with a 127th spot in the rankings before we do any signings, which is really low. It's well down the list, and our web is actually below the point that actually amounts to anything. So we're looking at pretty much a non-existent entity so far. With the signing period ready to begin, our dossier list is quite lengthy. Who we're going after now? Some of these guys only got to yellow. We did have to cancel one. Miltiadis went from a 3 to a 6, and then the next session bumped to a 9 in terms of the points. And even though, yes, 3 stars, and we definitely want something like that, as right now the best we have is 2 stars, he was just a time trialist anyway. Wasn't going to really offer as much and was already 25, didn't have a huge ceiling, so we dropped him, which allowed us to actually get after all but one of the others that I initially wrote down. And most of them are at the 3 points. We did have one other increase, but unlike Miltiadis, Liu already up to 3.5. He didn't start there. Already 72 Mountain. I mean, that is phenomenal compared to anything on the team currently, and it's a definite step in the right direction. We don't know, with only getting to 95%, quite how much he's going to cost, but here's where we're at in terms of the budget. We have 8 guys coming back, all on minimum salaries, so that's 20,000 committed to those 8 riders. Our budget for the coming year is 71K, but as we are down in Continental, and there's a decent chance we're still going to be Continental, I don't think it's possible, but I don't think we're going to push up to Continental Pro this season. It might be the next season before that happens, just based on the pool of riders that are available. I don't think getting to 3.5 is necessarily going to get us up to Continental Pro. So with that in mind, sponsor bonuses, race winnings bonuses are quite minimal at this level. So not counting on those, which means we have to count on the salary. And with only 66K in the bank, we don't have a lot of money to just go throw out there, which means the staff does count. We need to count the staff to keep things balanced, which means even though we have 71K, I think realistically I should be keeping it at 60 or less. We're already spending 20, so we've got 40K to spend on as many riders as we can realistically get. I mean, we want to get a minimum of 10 riders signed as we start rolling 3-year deals out there. You're looking at the revolving order of things that's going to get us to a roster of about 30. The overall highest ceiling guy is already 27, probably not going to actually reach his ceiling, but he's got the potential. He could actually be pretty dang good. We're going to try to get him in and see if he can make a late surge and pick up some levels and get there. He can actually be a really good sprinter, potentially. And thanks to the low quality right now, we easily sign him for the minimum. So I've already signed the 4 lowest current ability but best potential kind of guys: Tran, Lee, Barbakazi, and Zhu. Those 4 doesn't necessarily show up too much as overall ability. Definitely do show up in terms of that individual, what their strong suit is, whether it's sprinting, whether it's punching. They're the best low-high guys. We got them all signed on minimum, so that's 10K used so far. We've got 30K left. The next target is going to be the other top candidates, the guys that are the best overall in terms of current, and then still have a decent amount of growth possible. This is going to really determine how much further we can go, because these 6, for one thing, that gives us 10 guys if we sign all 6. But that group, actually, it's only 5 of this group. Miltiadis, right? We already excluded him. He has no interest in signing. If we were to get all 5, that puts us at 9, but then we need to see kind of what remains of the budget after that, assuming that these guys aren't going to quite sign on minimum, but I'm hoping to still get pretty good deals on them. Now, the number 1 guy on this list, Oscar, still signed for minimum, so that's a really good sign to start. That would be Oscar. So in a trend that I think is probably just going to stick on all the way through, Lou, who is probably the best overall contributor that we're going to get out of this group, is a climber who's already 3.5 stars, which, like I said, for us, that's the upper end of what we're going to get early on with this playthrough. We got him signed for 3K. First guy above minimum, and we're talking about 500 a month above minimum. Day one, I ended up adding 9 riders overall. So I got those 4 low highs. I got the 5 best riders available to us. From there, we are looking at, 27K right now of 40K that we had to spend. So we've got 13K left. Now, one more gets me to that minimum number that I was looking for, which is 10. We also go from literally nothing in the web department to 2 stars barely, and the web showing up, emerging just a little bit, being semi-competitive, but even then we're already 32nd in the index. For now, that does show up as Continental Pro, but once the other teams start filling out, that's not going to stay. That's not going to stay in there. So it does look like we are going to be spending another year as a Continental team. 3.5 star guys is not going to be enough right now, but with development, we'll inch our way up to Continental Pro within the next 1 to 2 seasons. But for now, we're getting closer. What I'd like to do though is I'm going to go spend a little bit more, but probably not all of that 40K that we have. Like I said, we're 1 away from the minimum goal. I think I might take 3 more, and I've already started to whittle down my list, all those guys on the dossier page, on who's got the highest potential and who can play a role to contribute within the team so that the team overall is more successful. And I'm thinking I'll take 3 more out of those 6. And we need to diversify a little bit on what we have. I mean, in terms of the quality, you're looking at 2.5 stars or better to really be considered quality right now. And that's all sprinters bar 1. So we need to add some climbers, because these guys are returning guys from this last year. We're looking at a 66 mountain, a 65 mountain, a 63 mountain. That's not good enough. Okay. A few of these guys coming in are more potential guys, but even then, another sprinter. So most of what we're finding at the moment is sprinters to support the team a little bit, make it a little more balanced. Means we're going to need to get after some guys that are climbing for those 3 spots. Season 1 is now in the books. Here is our recap. We are nowhere near making Continental Pro, but the new rankings, Alps and Phoenix, is coming up into World Tour. Fetus has lost their World Tour status. Number of new Continental Pro teams are stepping up. 35 is the cutoff. We end up at 64. And actually, just a few days ago, we were down about 80 something. So I think we've actually seen a boost. Just for reference, there's 211 teams in all. So we moved up from being a half-star team, which you could see, that puts you somewhere right at the bottom, right near the bottom. Last 2 teams, and from the looks of it, the bottom 10 are all Asian teams. And then, the next 10 are mostly Asian teams. But we were going from slightly over 2 stars up to 2.5 now. So I do believe one of our top 3 is different than before. Let's check in on that. And sure enough, Barahan Oscar has leveled up again. So this is a guy who started as a 3-star prospect when I opened the dossier on him. From then till now, which he is on a team, he's already leveled up a couple of times. So this is definitely our big star heading into next season, with a 4-star sprint capability, a 75-73 on the sprint. On the flat, a 70. This is enough to be a decent prospect and get the ball rolling, at least in terms of continental races. Continental Pro races with me at the helm and proper lead out, may be able to get a result or 2, but that's not quite there yet. But you can see he's still got plenty of room for progression, and this easily could be the first guy that we would see raising a nation, and that nation, of course, would be Turkey. Team recaps: Jumbo Visma, Ineos, and Bora Hansgrohe were the top 3 teams this year in the World Tour at the continental level. Alps and Fenix dominating, but they actually weren't that far ahead of the other competitors. But though they definitely look like they're going to be a strong team next year, comfortably moving into World Tour status. And in the Super Prestige, let's find how far down the list we are. Not bad for that first season, all things considered, but I do think you get some points depending on how you do in those national races. And with one win, a couple podiums, and a number of top 10s, I think we picked up the majority of our points off of that one particular series of events. But finishing in the top 75 overall, and then coming in next season, that was, as a team outside of the top 200 competitively, getting in the top 75. Now we're going to enter next season in the top 75. How much better will the team perform? Tour de France was won by Roglic with Haig and Gaudu. Wow, really? On the podium. That's a surprise one. Pogacar was there also, only finishing 5th for him. Really disappointing performance. Pols was in the top 10. Interesting top 10. At the Giro, Valverde coming away with victory. That is mega for him at the end of his career. Caruso and Bennett also on the podium, and then Martinez, Vingegaard, and Moss in La Vuelta. Demar won the World Championships. The time trial went to Roglic. Demar also winning the Euros, with Van Aert taking the time trial. And in the monuments, Jakobsen, Van Barle, Gourmet, Van Aert. A big surprise at Il Lombardia with Mattia Bais, 26-year-old, 4-star talent. That's a big surprise win right there. Was that through a breakaway type situation? Really surprised that he would be hanging on to win. And looking at Fellini and Kwiatkowski, McNulty as the top 4, you would think there's a pretty decent chance that was a breakaway type win, at least for the top 3, if not the top 4. McNulty could have been leading out Pogacar and fighting for the overall. And yeah, a few random names in the upper standings makes you think that the breakaway, at least the front guys, held on, and a number of other riders from the breakaway were caught and overtaken by the best chasers. So interesting result on that particular monument. But that is going to do it for our first season. Now, I think at a minimum, we will be rolling through seasons in 3 episodes or less for the next couple. The dossiers, the signing, are the biggest thing, the biggest obstacle. I did worry in this first season about how we would perform in some national championships when we had so many Japanese, Korean, Chinese riders, and even though those are overall weak nations, we had very weak riders from those nations, and that filled up the bulk of our team. So when you started breaking it down, we ended up with literally just a single rider who was the only man from his nation. And so he took 2 wins, and those 2 wins were the only 2 wins the team had all year, and ended up a big chunk of the points that we scored from that net gain. That was half of the sponsor confidence, but we nibbled away at it with so many other situations where it was podiums or top 10s for guys where they had very few riders. They had 4 to 8 riders competing, and they didn't win any of them. They weren't good enough for that. Next year, maybe we are going to be good enough for that, but we're going to have a number of guys from still nations that are 10 or fewer riders, or a dozen or fewer riders, or 20 or fewer riders, and even a top 25 still nibbles away at that sponsor confidence. So there's no reason to think that we are not going to get a maximum sponsor confidence in the coming seasons. We are still a long ways yet. I mean, we're a good 30 spots away from making Continental Pro, but we moved up 140 spots this year. Could we move up 30 next season? Possibly, but I wouldn't count on it. But by the next season, I would think we would definitely be there. We might be close come the end of season 2. That does it for this episode, though. I'm Decathlon Gamer. If you didn't do so before, like I said, 3 episodes is kind of the cutoff on the algorithm really mattering in the future. If you want to leave comments to talk about what's going on with the series, of course, I always welcome that, and I love to provide feedback on the majority of comments that do end up on videos. But it's the first 3 episodes where that algorithm matters. So please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Have a good one. Be safe out there. And bye for now.